When working with Python and Visual Studio Code, the likelihood is that you're going to be working within virtual environments. When you download Python, it comes with all the tools to allow you to start virtual environments on your computer. In this tutorial, we focus on the process. So do try and move away from asking yourself lots of questions. Why do I need a virtual environment? What is a virtual environment? And just focus on the process at this point. Within your course core content, additional information regarding the virtual environment will be provided if appropriate. Before you start this process, you will need Visual Studio Code and Python installed. So here on Windows, we've already installed Visual Studio Code. Check out the previous tutorials if you haven't already done so. All right, so here we have a project. It's automatically opened up my project. So let's just go through that process again. So the first thing that we want to do, File, open a folder, open the project that we want to work with. So we have a project folder on the desktop. We've opened that up and you can see that we have this file. Okay, so now we want to build a virtual environment. Like I mentioned, when we download Python, one of the tools that it comes with is the virtual environment. So we can go ahead and type py for Python, and then we can use the M flag, venv, to start the actual virtual environment. And then we need to then pass in the name of the folder. So this folder can be absolutely anything. So let's just call this venv. So this command will then start a new virtual environment. You can see that we've created a folder with lots of other information or folders and files inside of that. To start to paint a picture of what's going on here, imagine your computer is a box. When we download Python, Python is installed in that box. If we wanted to run Python, we could run Python from that box, our operating system. Now the problem is here, when we start working on multiple projects, each project may require a different or additional software. So for example, one project might be utilizing Django, maybe Django 4, and one project might be utilizing Django 3.2, an earlier version of Django. Now the problem is here, in our main box, if we were to install Django 4 and Django 3.2, for example, in the same box, potentially we would have conflicts. So the whole idea here of a virtual environment is that we make smaller boxes inside of our big box. So we create virtual environments within our computer. Within that virtual environment, we install or we have Python available, and we can install additional software inside of that smaller box. That way we can encapsulate everything that the project requires, that particular project requires inside of that smaller box without conflicting or damaging or changing the main big box, our main operating system. So we're working within a smaller box within the bigger box here. And that allows us to create specific environments for specific projects that we're working within. So what we've done here is we've created our virtual environment. Now what we need to do is we need to activate it. So on Windows, we just need to type in V. Now I'm going to press Tab here. Notice that it's going to end it's not going to end it. It's going to end the command. So VE, and then I press Tab, and you can see here it finishes off the line, and that references the folder here. Inside of here, we have a folder called scripts. So inside of this folder, we have scripts. So we're just navigating this folder system here. I press Tab, and then I need to activate. So inside of scripts, we have activate, and I press Tab to finish off that line or that command, and press enter, and you can see that we have a problem. Not everyone will experience this problem, but we need to change some of the settings to allow us to actually start a virtual environment. If you receive this issue here, we just need to configure the execution policies on your computer. Now there's a few different ways of doing this. If you go over to Stack Overflow, like I previously mentioned in the previous tutorial, a good place to resolve any issues that we might have. There are a few different methods of doing this. So let's just follow this one here. So we need to set execution policy unrestricted scope process as mentioned in the section in your PowerShell window. So we need to open up a PowerShell window. So let's go to Start. Let's type in PowerShell. Now we're going to need to open up a PowerShell window. Let's do it again. PowerShell window. We are going to need to do that as administrator. So I right click and then I select Run as Administrator. So that's going to open up PowerShell as an administrator. So now what we can do is we can run this command. So set dash execution policy unrestricted scope process. So I'm going to copy that. This link will be available in the resources of this tutorial. So let's go ahead and paste that in. Give that a go. So I need to now press Y or A to yes to all. So I type in capital A and press enter, and there we go. So now what we need to do is we just need to close Visual Studio Code. This is a step that some forget or don't do. And we can then go ahead and just open up Visual Studio Code once again. I think there's a shortcut on my desktop for that. And now let's go through the process again. So the virtual environment is still there. Whenever we come back to our project, you can see that the folder that was, or the path here, correlates to the folder of our project. So we're inside of this folder. So if I type in, let's just clear this. So I type in clear and enter to clear the screen. If I type in ls, we can see that that shows me the current folder that I'm working within, because I can see the files and folders that correlate to my project here. So I press clear again. Now I can just press up. That brings up the previous commands, up and down. So give that a go. That makes things a little bit easier. So I clear the screen again. So let's now start or try to activate our virtual environment again. So here I'm going to type in VE, press tab, then capital S, tab, A, tab, and there we go. So you can see that that method did not work. So that familiarize ourselves with the process, if you like. So let's go back into the PowerShell. Let's try this again. PowerShell, right click, run as administrator, press yes. And let's go ahead and press and type in set execution policy, unrestricted, and then dash force. So that's what we're going to run here. Okay, so I've just changed the scale of my font here so you can actually see the command. That should make it a lot easier for you. So let's press enter there. And let's now give this a go. So unrestricted force. So there are no messages here. So let's go back into Visual Studio Code. Let's go ahead and close the PowerShell. Let's open this up again, view terminal, and then let's give this a go again. So I just press up here twice to the command to activate virtual environment. You can type it in, of course. I press enter, and you can see that this time we then have access now to run the virtual environment. So you can see here at the start of this command line, I have VEMV, and that indicates the fact that I'm now working in the virtual environment. So step one is to create a virtual environment. Step two is always then to activate it. So before you start working on your project, you need to make sure that you activate the virtual environment. So we can deactivate the environment. So if I press up to bring up the previous command, press D, and then press tab to finish that off the command line there, press enter, you can see that that does not deactivate the virtual environment. So if I just close the window and then I open up again, you can see by doing that, I've then deactivated the virtual environment. So that's how to activate and then potentially deactivate the virtual environment. There are other variations here, but that's just a quick and simple way of working. Similar to overcoming the problem that we had previously, there are many different variations of performing and working in a way that kind of avoids that problem. But I've just shown you one of many ways that is possible. So again, I do recommend that you spend a little bit of time, maybe 5-10 minutes, just familiarizing yourself with that process, starting, stopping, maybe make some notes regarding the commands that you need, because you are going to pretty much create a virtual environment or start a virtual environment every time you work with a Python application, specifically Django applications.